Hey, welcome back. It is tea time with Tangi, and I am in a suit today. How's everyone doing? Hopefully, everyone's having a great week. And so today, I wanted to um, switch it up and talk about immigration on this video today. So, the tea of the day, before I even get into the tea of immigration, is this lovely, and you guys know I like to drink my tea and introduce a tea, a new one if I have one. This one's not a new tea, but it is chamomile, honey, and vanilla. Um, it is a go-to tea for helping calm your nerves. Chamomile is really good for if you have anxiety or any of that kinds of stuff, or you're just anxious about things, or if you're just having a crazy day and you just want to calm your nerves. Chamomile tea is really good for that. So, um, that is the tea. And if you guys want to drop down in my comments the teas that you guys like, or you think I should try, please drop them in the comments below. And please make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you are enjoying my content. And so let's go ahead and get into the tea of immigration today. So, what I wanted to talk about is the issues that I'm seeing with domestic violence in the immigration community. So, a lot of times, an individual may, get married to an undocumented. Or an undocumented individual may marry a U.S. citizen. Individual or an individual who has a legal permanent resident card. And so what ends up happening is there sometimes within that marriage, there's some kind of control issues, and it leads to the undocumented spouse, feeling isolated and fearful of potentially being deported if they report the abuse. And so the administration, I think back in 1994, created a act called the Violence Against Women Act that allowed for undocumented spouses to have a immigration benefit to be able to, still gain citizenship or excuse me, still gain immigration benefits without having to rely on their spouse to do so when there's domestic violence involved. And so I just wanted to talk about what that looks like. I have had the privilege of being able to help families, of domestic violence who are undocumented, be able to help them and their children be able to get an immigration benefit and become green card holders, which would eventually lead to a pathway to citizenship without having to rely on their U.S. citizen spouse or their legal permanent resident um, spouse. Okay. Again, the Violence Against Women Act, the VAWA, this application that you apply for through USCIS, which is Form I-360. This is a form that is used for not only just battered spouses, but it's for children who are abused by their U.S. Citizen parent or their legal permanent resident parent. And it's also used for parents who are abused by their U.S. citizen son or daughter that's of at least age 21 at the time of filing. So I'm going to focus primarily more on the spouse, the battered spouse, and just some of the things, some information that might help, especially if you're like an organization that helps domestic violence victims that are undocumented. This is a good resource or information for you to be able to use to help your clients find a pathway to, getting the immigration benefits that they may be entitled to without having to rely on the abusive spouse, which is a U.S. citizen or LPR. Okay. So, first things first is that there are some things that USCIS looks at to determine whether or not you can apply for this benefit. And one of the major things that they're going to look at is to see the legitimacy of the marriage, whether or not that marriage was entered into in good faith. So you didn't just get married to somebody so that you could, get a green card. They call those sham type of marriages, and they're scrutinized. They look at those heavily. So they're going to be looking to see, whether or not there was like a relationship form. They're looking at pictures and photos, and you have children. All of those things. They're taking all that into consideration when you're applying. So you're going to have to make sure you have the evidence to show that. You're going to submit all these things with your application. And then the second thing that they look at is the relationship of who's filing this. So again, I said I'm going to focus on spouses, but they are looking at, are you a spouse to a U.S. citizen or a legal permanent resident spouse? Or are you a child who's been abused by your U.S. citizen parent, the LPR parent, and again, the parent of a U.S. citizen son or daughter of at least age 21? Those are the relationships that they're going to be looking at to determine if you meet the eligibility criteria of filing for this petition. And then another thing that they look at, and excuse me for looking down, but I wrote some notes so I stayed on track. And another thing they're going to look at is whether or not you resided with the abusive spouse, if you're currently residing with them, or if you have in the past resided with your abusive spouse. And you don't have to be living with your abusive spouse at the time that you file, but I'll talk about that a little bit later because there are some nuances to when it comes to divorcing your spouse that I'll talk about. And it kind of plays on the living together part. And then they're going to be looking at the the abuse, so they're going to be wanting to know whether or not they're going to be looking at that, the abuse, like if there's, order of protections, police reports, your personal statement that you're going to want to give. And you don't have to have all these things because if you have some familiarity with domestic violence is not all physical. There's a lot of mental and emotional abuse that isn't seen. It's not, there's no bruises and all that stuff on the body, but having a spouse tell you that if they're withholding things from you, not letting you work, not letting you be around your family and your friends, making threats, saying if you call the police on me, to try to report any of this, I will have you're going to get deported, because you don't have any status, and they're refusing to file the appropriate paperwork that they need to file to help you to get legal status. So all of that can be a form of manipulation that isn't seen to the naked eye. So you writing a personal statement to those effects can be beneficial in applying for the VAWA, and that's what I'm going to call it, is the VAWA. It's a Violence Against Women Act application. Okay. And so they're going to be looking at that kind of documentation. They also want to know about your moral character. So sometimes in an abusive situation, especially where one spouse has more control over the other, let's say the two of them get into some altercation, a physical altercation, and let's say one of the U.S. citizen spouse versus the undocumented spouse. The police are sent out, and the U.S. citizen spouse has, it seems to be more, they believe the U.S. citizen spouse and say that the undocumented spouse hit them first or did this or that. So you may have it to where you get a charge against yourself. I mean, these are some things that can go on your record, but uh, USCIS officer, an immigration officer, will look at all of the totality of the whole circumstances, and just, and they can kind of figure out what's going on in that, the whole domestic violence piece. And then you may have some other things on your record that have nothing to do with the domestic violence, and so some of those things you want to take into consideration. If you do have anything on under like a criminal record, if you have that on your record when you're filing, you want to definitely seek legal advice before you're filing anything in immigration, with immigration, because you don't want to jeopardize you don't want to jeopardize your case or anything. But like I said, seeking legal advice if you have a criminal history, because they're going to be looking at your good moral character. And so the last thing, and I think I already kind of mentioned that. I believe I did in the very beginning, was just making sure you're showing proof of your marriage being a legitimate marriage. Okay, so that's a little bit of the requirements in order to apply. You can file your petition as yourself. If you have children, you can add them to your petition as derivatives of your petition, of your VAWA petition, and vice versa. If it's the child that you're petitioning for, it's your child that's had been abused and you're petitioning for your child, you can also add yourself as a derivative of that application. So again, those are some things you definitely want to seek some kind of legal advice on if you're not understanding the forms that are to be filled out for this application. Okay. And then there's a lot of different evidence that you're going to want to submit with this. So it's very important that you're reading the instructions of these forms, which is the form, excuse me, I-360, that's going to help you to know what you need to be submitting when you file for this immigration benefit. And then, so I wanted to talk quickly about just the questions that kind of come up for this particular benefit. And one of the questions that gets kind of asked often is, can men apply for VAWA? And absolutely, yes, they can. I understand the name has women in it, but there are men who are also abused. It may not be as reported as much. Men may not be reporting their abuse, but if you are a male and you are undocumented and you're married to a U.S. citizen spouse or an LPR spouse, you definitely have the right to look into filing for VAWA. And so, yes, men and women can apply for VAWA. Another question that comes up is, can you be divorced when filing for the VAWA application? And yes, you can. However, there are some exceptions to that. And because, it comes up, do I have to stay married? Because some people think that they do. And I mentioned earlier on that about living with the abuser or not living with the abuser. And some individuals, the undocumented spouse, they move out, they go stay in shelters or friends or family, and they don't file for divorce. And then some do file for divorce and VAWA at the same time. I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios that plays out, but you can be divorced so long as you meet the certain exceptions. And I'm going to read off those exceptions because I primarily deal with, I've seen just the one exception that I deal with mostly. Um, and that is where they've been, they got divorced, but it was 2 years prior to the filing. So there wasn't a, it wasn't more than 2 years since they had been divorced when they filed, or they are filing for divorce at the time that they are filing for their VAWA application. So they're doing them simultaneously at the same time. But the exceptions are, so this is about the question of, do you have to remain married to your abusive spouse while you have a pending VAWA application? And so you just need to meet the following exceptions if you're not married to your abusive spouse. And that is, you believe you were legally married to your abusive spouse, but the marriage is not legitimate solely because of the bigamy of your abusive spouse. So that is, if your spouse committed bigamy, married more than one person, there's another wife or husband on the side that you didn't know about, then that is one of the exceptions that allows you to not have to be remain married to your spouse while your application is pending. 2, if your abusive spouse died within 2 years of filing the petition. And then 3, your abusive spouse lost or renounced his or her citizenship or lawful resident status due to an incident of domestic violence. And then 4, the one that I mentioned, that's the one I see often, is your marriage to your abusive spouse was terminated within 2 years prior to filing of the petition, and there is a connection between the termination of the marriage and the abuse. Okay, so that last one is the one I see often, where I might have a individual who's already filed for divorce, and then they're coming for the VAWA. So long as they, for the VAWA petition to do the application, so long as that they, their divorce was 2 years prior to the filing, and not any time later, then, and it's connected, and their divorce was connected because of the domestic violence. So they didn't just get a divorce because they woke up one day and said, I don't like this person anymore. I like to divorce them. And then, you know, it has to have some kind of connection there. So that's the one, like I said, I see often. So yes, you do not have to remain married to the individual while you have a pending VAWA application, or before you file your application. Okay. And so, and then another question that kind of comes up, and I actually had experienced this not too long ago, where the clients, you know, are the client is married already to a U.S. citizen, and the abusive spouse already filed like for the green card application, and they're just waiting for, you know, for the, you know, a decision on that. And in the meantime, the abuse is going on, and the, you know, the spouse leaves, the undocumented spouse leaves, and reaches out for services to get, you know, this application. And so when that happens, then so a lot of times when you're filing for the VAWA application, you're going to submit that, and you're going to submit a green card application, and your EAD application, which is the employment authorization document, allows the undocumented spouse to work. So you're going to file all these papers, you know, together, and there's some other forms, but you're going to file those, you know, and so the abusive spouse have already filed all this stuff. So what you can do, if that happens, you can request to transfer the I-485 application and the EAD application. You can request that those documents be transferred to your pending VAWA application. And what that does is it actually speeds up the priority date so that your case gets processed a little sooner than what it would have been from just starting from scratch. Okay. But you have to request that. So it's not just something that's automatically done. So that is some of the things. These are some of the things that come up with the VAWA application. Again, the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, is very, very beneficial. I believe they had just renewed it recently to continue this benefit. It is so vital for the times that we are living in now, where you have men and women and children and parents being abused by their, and they're undocumented, and they're being abused by their U.S. citizen spouse or LPR spouse, or U.S. citizen parent. Or U.S. citizen, son or daughter, again, because it's all of those different relationships, right? So it's so important that we have these programs and these benefits available to undocumented individuals, and I'm so privileged to have the opportunity to, be able to share the information and let people know that there is, support and services out there for individuals who feel abandoned and hopeless, and they're being abused, whether it's a physical abuse or mental, emotional abuse. They have some kind of outlet and hope and resource to be able to continue on their journey of becoming a citizen. And again, with the VAWA, it leads to a green card, and then eventually it leads to citizenship down the road. And that is for the spouse, and if they have children as well. So I hope this video was helpful. If you if you need more information, please, if you have more questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and I will respond to any questions that you have. Again, this information that I'm providing does not create any type of, it's not any legal advice, and it does not create any type of, client attorney relationship. So this is just all informational. And like I said, you're more than welcome to ask me any questions down in the comments, and I'll answer them. So that's it for today. Until next time, I probably will be talking a little bit more on some more immigration benefits, more humanitarian type of reliefs for individuals, like trafficking survivors and victims of crimes that happen within the U.S. And that's it. So enjoy the rest of your week, and I will be tuning in the next time. Take care. Oh, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Bye.